Today I'm bringing you along as I build a batch of inlay cutting boards. These aren't your average cutting boards. Each one sells for $300 to over $500. We're making 10 of them start to finish, from raw lumber to detailed inlays. And I'll share the tools and the process that brings it all together.
And here's my list of orders. I'm a little behind, so let's get cutting.
Step 1 starts with the lumber. I mostly use 5/4 hardwoods, no stains, just all natural colors. And I break down these 8-foot boards into more manageable chunks based on my build list. From there, they go through the joiner and the planer to get them flat, or flat-ish. I'm not too picky at this point since they'll get glued up and flattened again later. But having everything relatively square makes things way easier down the road. And now it's just a game of turning those big chunks of lumber into little strips of lumber. I don't follow a strict system here. I'm cutting these boards into strips based on what each piece gives me. The goal is to make the most out of the material I have, maximize yield, and avoid wasting good wood. It's more about working with what I got than sticking to an exact measurement. For example, each strip is not 2 inches. It could be 1 3/4 inches. And it's all about efficiency. I absolutely love my stopwatches. These stay in the clamps for just over an hour.
So the first stage is done. I have everything glued up in what I call blanks. This is all the cutting boards pre-becoming end grain. Now I'm gonna run these all through the planer and get them chopped into chunks so we can glue them into end grain. And this batch is 10 boards. At this point, I'm about 6 hours in, getting all my material planned out, cut, and glued to this stage. We also have this one random edge grain.
And here's a look at my build list. Jess makes these for me as orders come in. There's 2 older lists here just to show you examples, but I essentially just look at the list and then work my way through to figure out what I need to cut and build. And this week, it's a lot of large boards with juice grooves. Then again, no real system here. I'm just removing as little material as possible to just get rid of the glue lines and ensure everything's even. The only goal is to keep them as thick as possible. And this is the part where the shop turns into a sawdust factory. I'll probably end up filling 4 large garbage bags, and this gets donated to locals to use in their gardens or whatever they want to use it for. And one thing I always slept on or was too lazy to do was swap out my table saw blade. Here I'm switching from a ripping blade to a high-tooth crosscut blade, and it just makes these cuts so much cleaner and drastically less tear out. And my biggest enemy at this point is small little hairline cracks, so I'll just take off a little bit and just smack it against the board to see if it cracks. And then here I'm starting to get a little more precise. They don't need to be exact, but I'm shooting for just under 2 1/4 inches. So by the time I surface everything, I end up with about 2 inches for a finished board. And the ends of the boards are typically where the cracks are. You can see all these fine little hairline cracks, and I try to place them all one direction. You could also cut some of these off prior to gluing them together, but it's just easier and faster for me to just throw them all on one side and then just cut off the excess. These can be hard to see and ruin a cutting board real quick. I've cracked boards with little tiny hairline cracks that I just didn't see. And it's not very fun when you're 90% finished with the board and you go to sand it and notice there's a small crack in the middle of it. And here's a great example of how deep these can actually go. Like, you can see these are pretty big cracks, and then when I flip it around, they're hardly visible. So I just cut everything 4 or 5 inches long and expect me to have some waste. Then I do my best to alternate the grains. This makes the board a little stronger, and I just think it looks better aesthetically. And then a bunch more glue to glue these into their final end grain form. Here they're roughly 1 inch bigger on each side. I'll typically leave these in the clamps a little longer, roughly 2 hours, gluing several at a time, and scraping off the excess glue after about an hour. As the glue sets, I continue to work on the other boards on the list. And as you can kind of see here, there's another hairline crack that's pretty hard to see, and quickly fails the smash test.
So I got the last 2 boards in the clamps, and all these other boards are glued up and ready to start surfacing. Right now I'm about 10 hours in to get all the boards cut, everything organized, and into their end grain form. I have 10 end grain and this 1 random edge grain. So I have some of the kits glued for the plugs, and I'm gonna start surfacing these now. And while the CNCs are running, I'll be working on the other plugs and getting like Vectric files and all that stuff in order.
Having the right tools makes a huge difference. We've been doing this full time since 2017, and over the years, I've been fortunate enough to slowly build up my shop, which really helps streamline the process. When I started, I definitely didn't have all this. It's taken years of upgrades and reinvesting to get here. Projects like this can be tough to justify with entry-level tools, especially if you're trying to make money. They take a lot more time, and time adds up fast. There's already a ton of work and material that goes into these boards before I even start the inlay. From computer design to all the milling and glue ups. And having the right setup keeps the whole process efficient. At least until the shop supervisor Merlin shows up, then efficiency drops about 30% when he clocks in. But once the large tools and dust collectors kick on, he's out of there. And now the onefinity takes over. This specific pattern here takes about 2.5 hours per side. Some boards can take 15 minutes depending on complexity, up to 3 hours per side. Unless it's a custom board and design that the customer paid for, I typically avoid boards that take longer than 5 hours to mill, as it really limits me because I can only essentially cut one board per day on the machine. And in this batch of boards, we have two 20x16 floral boards like this, one with a juice groove and one without. I cut the juice groove right away to ensure everything stays properly aligned, and then the board doesn't have to go on the machine again other than surfacing. And now onto the plug, which is essentially just a mini cutting board. I make these the same exact way as the cutting boards themselves, they just get cut into 5/8 chunks instead of 2-inch chunks. And these are essentially little mini end grain cutting boards. They have to be end grain, otherwise the cutting board will fail. If you have an end grain board and a face grain inlay, it won't be long until that thing cracks. And I've played around with multiple ways to make these little end grain plugs, but I've just ended up settling on making them individually. That's just what I prefer. And now on to cutting the design into the plugs. We use our AirWeights vacuum table. It holds them nice and flat and I don't gotta worry about screwing them down to the wasteboard. And here's our maple plug. After a few passes through the drum sander, it's pretty flat and even. The bulk of the material is removed with upcut bits. This part doesn't take all that long. The long part comes to the tiny little detail bit. And there we have it, essentially a reverse image of what's on the cutting board itself. And since end grain is essentially a bunch of little straws, I have to use this tape backing. Luckily for me, I can use this wide tape 2-3 times before I have to throw it away. So I'll just peel it off and stick it onto the next board of equal size. And these large boards I usually do in 2 sections. Why? Because it's way less stressful. I don't want to feel like I'm racing the glue, as it takes some finesse to get the glue in all the tiny little lines. I just tape off the area that I don't want glue to get on and just start spreading this stuff around. It does look like a lot, but I err on the side of too much rather than too little, because the glue will kind of sit on the surface and look like there's glue down in the lines, but there's actually not. So I just err on the side of too much glue, accounting for the excess glue to just squeeze out. And I do use a custom-made press to press the boards. I don't just hammer them in. And once these long carves are carving, I might not even be in the shop. I usually just get to the point to where it's running the V-bit, and then I'll just set an alarm for every 30 to 45 minutes because really not much can go wrong. If I'm running like an hour carve, I might be mowing lawn or cleaning the shop or doing something else. I'm not just sitting here watching it work. That's a lie. I get sucked in watching this thing just run around in circles. And there's a lot that goes into detailed cutting boards like this. I can't just inlay any image out there. Even if I can find an image online I like, I typically have to completely redraw it to get it to inlay properly. And yes, I use a lot of Tite Bond. I don't actually keep track, but I for sure used a gallon of glue making this batch of boards. And I absolutely love these mind-bending designs. I have 2 optical illusion boards like this, and I just think they're so cool how 2 pieces of wood and a design can play tricks on your mind.
A common question I get is where I get my lumber. So this is my last invoice. Wood is quite expensive. So this last order I paid $1,800. I ordered it from Peak Lumber and Plywood, and they deliver it. If you order over, I want to say $500, they do free delivery, so the lumber comes to the house and I unload it off of like a semi essentially into the shop, into my racking. This could last me 1 month, this could last me 3. It just depends how busy I am. I ordered 100 board foot of prime 5/4 walnut at $11.50 a board foot. That came out to about $1,150. I ordered 5/4 hard maple at 60 board foot for $5.50 a board foot, $313. 5/4 cherry at 60 board foot, just under $5 a board foot, and that was $279. So yeah, wood's expensive. Each cutting board uses roughly between 4 to 8 board feet, 5 to 10 to make it simple. And it could cost me anywhere from $30 to make a board up to $100 plus just in materials. And that doesn't include like glue or anything like that. So walnut's expensive. The majority of the boards I make are walnut, and at $11.50 a board foot, it comes out to like $50, $60 a board just in walnut. And then you got to factor in the plug, which is maple, and it adds up quick.
Then once the glue is cured, I surface the plug off with the CNC, or I use the bandsaw. Then the process for the other side is exactly the same. I get a ton of comments on social media saying this is as easy as just pushing a button, that using a CNC isn't real woodworking. I strongly disagree, but everyone's entitled to their opinion, and that's totally fine. Odds are most of these people have never operated a CNC and just assume it's simple. I can assure you it is not. I've probably made over 100 of these boards by now, and I'm still learning with every one. To do this well, you need a solid understanding of wood, how it moves, how it reacts, and you also need a pretty close relationship with your machine. On top of that, you either need to be able to draw designs yourself, or work with someone who can create files specifically for a CNC, and specifically inlays. That's a skill set all on its own. So sure, running the machine might not be woodworking by itself, but everything else around it absolutely is. Prepping the wood, building the blanks, gluing them up, finishing, and especially understanding how and why things fail. That is woodworking. These boards can still fail even if you take the CNC out of the equation completely, and I was able to carve them by hand. There are so many factors, from glue lines, grain direction, to the humidity of my shop, the moisture content of the wood, and many other factors, that if you don't understand, you're going to have a pretty bad time. So no, the machine running by itself isn't woodworking. But without real woodworking knowledge, there's no way you could pull this off and do it well. There are so many things that go into making a seamless inlay. And if it's not seamless, it's going to fail. These boards get wet, they dry out, they expand and contract. If the inlay doesn't fit perfectly, you're going to get cracks and gaps. Even if I gave someone the exact numbers I use for my fitment, it probably wouldn't work on their machine. I could use the exact same bit on 2 different machines and get totally different results. I've even seen differences between 2 of the same bits on the same machine, which is why I recalibrate every time I use a new bit. So if you ask for my offset numbers and I don't tell you, that's why. It's not just a simple answer, and I don't want to give you numbers that just aren't going to work for your machine. So long story short, no, the machine running isn't technically woodworking, but everything around it is. And speaking of machines, I'm currently working on building a relationship with this one. It's been a little bit of a rocky start, but building that relationship with the machine is half the fun. And if you don't like learning or troubleshooting, CNCs or 3D printers just aren't going to be for you. And while the machine runs, I start sending boards through the drum sander, which is also another huge time saver. This board here was purchased as a wedding gift. I don't always know what the designs mean, but I know they hold sentimental value for the person receiving it. The idea that someone might smile or have a memory come rushing back every time they see this board, that's what makes building these extra special. Another common question I get is why do I use the bandsaw for some boards and then use the CNC to clear others? The only reason is my bandsaw is only so tall, so if the board's taller than 13 inches, I have to use the CNC. And yes, this piece here gets wasted. Another question I get is why don't I make it thicker and use it for another board? I just can't. I have tried, but by the time I put glue on it, put it in the press, and put all that pressure and moisture into it, to get it flat again is just super hard and just not worth the time. So it's less than a 1/4 inch thick, and unfortunately, a little bit of waste in woodworking is just part of the game. And if you're curious, one of these large maple chunks is about $1.80 in waste. End grain is a pain in the butt to sand. Each board takes me roughly 45 minutes to an hour to sand and apply oil. But in between there, I spray water on the boards to give them a water pop. This keeps the boards smooth after they get washed. If you don't do this, the board will feel rough after its first washing. So this just minimizes the fuzziness. And it looks kind of cool spraying water on them. And as I'm not full on Etsy production mode anymore, we sold our big laser recently and switched over to this little diode laser for customization and like our branding. It's far smaller, I can just stick it away and hide it. and it's way less maintenance than our CO2 laser was. And a few minutes later, we have a perfect little brand. And to finish the boards to give them some protection against the water, we saturate them with walrus oil cutting board oil, which is a blend of all natural oils, nothing crazy. I let them soak overnight and then just remove the excess the next day. As this is a natural finish and 100% food safe, as you wash it over time it will fade and you will need to reapply it probably once or twice a year, depending how much you use your board. It's relatively cheap and a bottle like this would literally last you a lifetime. So your beautiful cutting board will require a little bit of maintenance, but overall it takes only a few minutes, and if you have to, it's solid wood. You could even give it a little bit of sanding between oilings and it would look good as new. Cover them in oil and back in the racking they go until the next day. We also offer these cutting board stands so people can display their cutting boards, and we usually sell a few with each batch. We also offer these files on our website if you're interested and have a CNC. And these are a few boards I made during the holidays. I really didn't get any footage of the cutting board stands this time around because I forgot. But as you can see, they sit in there nicely. I'll have to come up with a few new designs pretty soon here. And then to finish the boards off, we do add rubber feet unless the customer specifically asks not to have them on the board, and then we give them a quick waxing and buff to give them some extra protection and shine. And that's the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and here's a quick look at all the boards we made. This took me just over a week. And now these will head inside to Jess. She'll ship them up and get them on their way to the customers. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.